you. You're very kind. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lloyd, for those kind comments, and preceded with a very good summary of why we're here. And this is the article that he wants us all to read. I would appreciate if the people who operate this auditorium will try to reduce the lights coming in on the podium and put a little bit more light if possible on the people gathered here. Somebody around who can do that? Okay. All right. Let's go. Half of democracy is showing up. Showing up at rallies, meetings, gatherings like this, courtrooms, showing up at city council gatherings, showing up at neighborhood council gatherings. Back in 1775, in my home state of Connecticut, according to the primary materials in a book I read through once in a while about the American Revolution, several thousand people showed up in a field at Farmington, Connecticut, to protest the policies of King George III. At that time, I don't think Connecticut had more than 80,000 people. They came by foot, by horse, by wagon, several thousand. What do you think it would take today to get several thousand people at Farmington, Connecticut? The great labor leader, Eugene Debs, in the early part of the 20th century, took a train to Chicago to speak to people in Chicago. 200,000 people showed up in a field. There was no email, no internet. A lot of people didn't have electricity. How come they showed up years ago? Huge labor rallies. When's the last time you saw a huge labor rally addressed by the head of the union? When is it last time you saw large rallies of farmers, even those that are left? It's very difficult. We watch screens, television, computer, video, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. We're in virtual reality, not reality. How many of you here tonight, on reflection, could have easily brought 2 more people who you count as your relatives, friends, neighbors, or co-workers? How many? Why not? You think you're here for me? You think you're here for Nader Gonzalez? You're here for you. You can tell these people, you come to the Benson High School auditorium to defend yourself, defend your future, defend your children's life possibilities, defend the preservation of the earth. But we look at screens, we isolate ourselves, or we use email, or we just don't like to try to persuade people to break their Tuesday evening routine. I remember when I started to take on the auto companies, I would hitchhike to Washington from Connecticut, partly to save money, and partly I liked the adventure. I always learned from people who picked me up. One guy laid bricks, another guy was a tree surgeon, had a monopoly audience. And I went to Washington, and one day a truck driver picked me up in Delaware, and he said to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "To Washington, D.C." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to federally regulate the automobile industry." He gave me a funny look. I thought he was going to drop me off on the road. Was that a display of excessive pride? No. It was a reflection that I'd lost a lot of friends in high school and college in cars that couldn't protect them in crashes, even 20 miles an hour, because there was no airbag, no seatbelt, no padded dash panel, no steering column. collapsibility, no side impact, no stronger door latches, no head restraints, all the things we take for granted, which the engineers in Detroit knew how to do decades and decades and decades ago. In fact, the padded dash panel was prevalent on the ancient Roman chariots. How's that? They gave GM 2,000 years lead time. At that time, death on the highway was the first leading cause of death for people age 4 to 24. And I got to Washington, and people thought I was a CIA agent when they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm pushing to regulate the auto companies." They thought that was a cover. Why am I telling you this story? Well, it ended up very nicely. The highway and auto safety laws were passed by Congress in 1966, signed by Lyndon Johnson. Nice White House ceremony he invited me to. And irregularly enforced to save over 1 million lives, and a lot of lives overseas because the other foreign auto companies had to meet our standards, and millions of injuries prevented or reduced in severity. Now, did that take 1 million people dropping everything they're doing? No. It took about 10 people, some engineers, I organized, few key people in Congress, one of them being Senator Magnuson from Washington State, who's the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. What it took was the media performing its responsibility to cover this, General Motors hiring detectives to follow me and lure me into compromising positions with young women, and being caught in the Senate office building trailing me when I was slated to be a Senate witness. That happens to be a federal crime, to intimidate a witness slated for testimony for a Senate hearing. The press covered it, and when people found out that these cars could have saved their lives, that the engineers were prohibited from doing this, that these cars were built as psychosexual dreamboats that collapsed on the occupants, killed them even in a 15-mile collision if their head hit the cookie cutters on the dash panel, they really got upset. And there was a swell, there was a rumble out there. And the result was the fastest federal regulation of a major industry in American history. 6 months it took. Now, we went on to do this with the coal industry that was exposing coal miners to black lung disease and mine shaft accidents due to negligence. In 1900 to year 2000, over 450,000 coal miners gave their lives for their companies. That's more than all the Americans killed in World War II. That's just one industry. Then we went on to establish the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, opposed by all the corporate lobbies. We overcame them. And then the Product Safety Commission, air and water, pollution control laws, the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency. Why did Nixon sign these bills? And more.